Welcome to day 2 of the NVC reset for more self-connection, more self-love, and more joy in your life. I'm happy that you're back. Today we're going to be looking at some blocks, some things that might be blocking you to get to those 2 needs that you found yesterday. What you're going to need today is again the sheet. If you don't have that or lost it, I'll put the link again, and something to write on as usual. So get that all and we'll get started. So what is in the way of self-love and self-connection is our own thoughts. It's in a way it's unfortunate, right? Like, oh no, not our own thoughts again. But on the other hand, we do have some control over that. We don't really control other people, but we have some control about what we do with our own thoughts, right? And so I'm talking about thoughts like, I'm not lovable, I'm a bad parent, I didn't do enough for my career this year. All sorts of thoughts that our inner critic has that, if we would have a friend that would say that to us, we would be like, okay, maybe I don't want to be friends with this person, but we do that to ourselves, right? So it's super important to realize that we have a relationship with ourselves and we can work on that and we can become our own best friend, right? That's the ideal. That's what we're going to work on today. Our first step is that we're going to narrow it down a little bit by looking at the past year and seeing what is your inner critic saying about the past year, and pick one main thought. Okay, we're not going to make it too big right now. We're just going to practice with one main thought. You can always do more later. But for now, just pick one main thought that your inner critic has about the past year. Our second step is that you're now going to assume that your inner critic wants the best for you, right? We also want to treat our inner critic with love because it is a part of us. And so, okay, assuming your inner critic wants the best for you, what is the need that it's trying to meet by telling you this thing? So for example, say that I'm telling myself, I'm ruining all my relationships. I'm having too many conflicts, right? I have too many conflicts. Let's keep it to that. Maybe what my inner critic wants by saying that is actually ensuring that I do my best for my relationships because I need connection. Right? Maybe the need that it's trying to protect for me is connection and maybe also belonging, something like that. So now let's look at what your inner critic is trying to protect for you. So look at the list with needs and see what you can come up with. If you need a little bit of help, let me know in the comments and maybe I can help you find the need. Now, our third step is that we're going to rewrite a story that you have about yourself. So we have these, singular thoughts, but sometimes when we repeat them a lot, maybe throughout our whole life, they become a story and you might need a little bit more. In my experience, so NVC usually focuses on find the need behind the jackal, right? And that's kind of it. Or then you find a request, but that's the thing you do to work with the inner critic. I find sometimes that we need to put in a little bit more to not have to those same thoughts still keep coming back, right? So what's helpful is to rewrite a story that you have about yourself. And I'm guessing that whatever jackal you had might be a story that is not coming just from the past year. If not, then maybe pick something else. But I'm guessing that it might be something that is repeating itself throughout the years. And so what you want to do is to make a little start here and now with rewriting that story for yourself. And what that takes is a little bit of repetition. It doesn't always get replaced right away, but I noticed that even doing it for 5 minutes already, for me at least, makes a difference. And I've seen that with students as well. So what we're going to do is say that your story is, I'm a bad parent. Then you want to set a timer for 5 minutes. We're going to do that in a second. And for 5 minutes, you're going to write down every single little thing you did as a parent throughout, let's say, the past year again, that was even remotely helpful or effective, right? Or satisfying, right? Maybe you've had satisfying moments with your kids. And so we're going to do that right now. Again, don't think about it too much. Just set a timer for 5 minutes. Write down every little thing that comes to your mind, even if your inner critic is like, ugh, is that everything? That's his job or her job or their job. That's their job, right? Your job right now is to create a new story and to start building on that new story. So let's get started. Put your timer and start writing. Now, step 4 is to make a little conclusion of what you wrote and to put that in the comments. So for example, this thing with parenting, right? Let's keep that example. I might conclude, I did a ton of things as a parent, right? And what you want to do is you want to pick something that is believable. You don't have to fight with your inner critic and say something that you don't really believe in. Say something that you believe based on what you just wrote. And put that in the comments as a little, little conclusion of what you wrote. Now, our last step is that we want to give the inner critic the space that it deserves, which means that, let's say that your life is a car, right? You're driving a car and that decides where you're going in life. Now, you don't want your inner critic behind the steering wheel, because then you might not be driving at all. You might get too scared to do anything at all, right? So let's say your higher self or your bigger self, whatever you want to call it, your adult self is behind the steering wheel, and the inner critic you want to have in the back of the car. And so we are now going to symbolically put your inner critic in the back of the car. It can be part of your life, it can be useful, sometimes warning you for things, and you can work with it, but you're going to be behind the steering wheel. So take a piece of paper, it can be around this size, doesn't have to be too big, and then you're going to find an object in your surroundings that's going to represent your inner critic, and an object that's going to represent your adult self, let's say. So for example, for me the inner critic was this pepper, and my adult self is this fiery fiery thing. So don't think about this too long, no perfectionism, remember, but just pick something what your intuition is called to, and make sure that the inner critic is not like a lot bigger than your adult self. So now you're going to draw on your piece of paper 4 seats, of which one has a steering wheel. As you can see, there is no good artist techniques needed for this. Just draw that. And then you put your inner critic in the front seat behind the steering wheel. This is the starting situation, right? Preferably use a table, don't do it like me. And then you're going to put your adult self in the back seat, right? And just look at that for a second and see what that feels like for you. Like, I don't know what it feels like for you, but for me, and what I hear from students as well, is like I feel a bit lost. I feel a little bit scared, actually, because this thing is taking me everywhere, but it doesn't have all my interest at heart somehow, right? It's like it doesn't see all of me. It doesn't really see my power, actually. So now let's just remove the adult self for a second, and let's move the inner critic to the back seat. And then you move the adult self to the front seat behind the steering wheel. And then just look at that and see how that feels. Now, I must say, for me, I still feel like this one, I picked it a little bit too big. So I would have liked something a bit smaller, but I must say this feels much more calm to me. I'm curious to hear what it does for you. And so now we're going to disassemble this little work of art. So we can say out loud, this is now a lighter again. And this is now a pepper sheet again. Sorry about that. And this piece of paper, you can do whatever you want, but make sure that the objects become objects again. So lastly, put in the comments that conclusion that you made about your rewriting, and maybe you want to share what other stories you'd like to rewrite. I'm very curious to hear about that. Also, if you run into something. If you want to support this channel, please like this video. That's always super helpful. And tomorrow is going to be exciting because we're actually going to look at some more direct techniques for self-love, and we're going to reconnect or connect, maybe you've never done that, with your inner child. And so I'd love to see you tomorrow. Sending you lots of love. Oh, and if you'd like to do a little more today, you can watch this video.